I watch way too many movies. Like a lot of people, watch a lot of movies, but I have like over 1,000 a year, which
Jeez.
is completely ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous, but I don't know any other way to be.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror. We'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to the Disconnected, and Justin Laliberty is back after almost a full year. Thanks for coming back, Justin.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
This last year, you and I have been extremely busy, lots of stuff going on, but the industry as a whole has been extremely busy. And last year we talked a very OCN-centric episode, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit, I'm sure, but I kind of want to just grab bag topics of how you're feeling, how you feel about the home video industry as a whole at the moment, and just check in. So let's jump in. One of the exciting things lately is some of these titles that people kind of speculated for a long time were nigh impossible to have released on physical media. It seems like every 72 hours right now we're getting some of those announced. Any of those particularly exciting to you?
It's for me, what's more exciting isn't necessarily, I am excited about the titles we didn't think were possible, but I'm also more excited by the titles I didn't know existed. So, I feel like, especially lately with kind of career comprehensive box sets,
yes,
things like that, where I know that the filmmakers existed, but I didn't know that there was as much work, let alone accessible work as there is, like the Ormond box set from Indicator, I think is a prime example of that. And then even, the Black Emanuelle box, which of course, like the Black Emanuelle series is a storied series, but that could even exist is kind of insane to me. And I think shows just how healthy this market is. And how kind of rabid fans are to buy these things that, aren't cheap. It's not, these are very expensive items to produce and to purchase and collect. So everything about it is, when you talk about kind of boutique home video, that's like exactly what I'm hoping for, is a lot of care and attention paid to things that people didn't know existed. Of course, there are plenty of people who were already Black Emanuelle fans, but I think there's also so many people that are like, holy shit, like, how is there, 20-something movies in this box?
Oh, yeah.
And all of these hours of extras devoted to this thing that is incredibly niche. And I think a lot of us, that have been kind of invested in physical media for decades, or are just kind of like stuck in the wavelength of that type of cinema, forget how new some of this can be to a lot of people. So for those of us who are just excited to kind of see something come out that we never thought was possible, it's even more exciting that this is being, made available to people who had no idea that it was a thing to begin with. But at the same time, I get excited about those Grail titles that I never thought would get an HD release, like yesterday, the announcement for Surviving the Game. So I'm a huge Ernest Dickerson fan, and that one, it's a Warner Brothers title. It's been kind of just, I don't want to say languishing, because it's been available at least on DVD and VOD, so it hasn't been, necessarily lost to time, but, it hasn't had an HD upgrade in the time that Blu-ray has been around, which is a long time now. So I kind of just wrote it off as something that would probably never see the light of day, and here we are. So I'm really excited for something like that. And, speaking of Warner Brothers, After Hours came out recently this year with the Blu-ray and 4K from Criterion. So just seeing titles like that start kind of coming out, it's really exciting. just all across the board, from studio titles to, kind of these lost regional gems that we never thought would really come out.
Right. Yeah. It's been a wild year. I mean, some of the ones you mentioned, and then Severin getting their hands on Della Morte Dell'Amore and Spider Labyrinth. And then, all leads kind of to some of these studios that it seems like they're getting the indication, the boutiques seem to be thriving with some of these. Maybe we should copy that a little bit. They started announcing some like Paramount has suddenly jumped in and are releasing everything after releasing nothing for such a long time. Mm-hmm. Any of those that were just particularly mind-blowing that you were happy about over the last year?
I don't know about over the past year, but the ones like from Paramount that I was super excited to get even HD releases on were, The Hunted was one. Of course, William Friedkin recently passed away. So, yeah, I'm really excited that The Hunted came out in HD, and I'm a huge Good Burger fan. So I was really excited when that came out. There's a lot of those. It seems like there's finally a tendency to kind of revisit titles from the 90s and the 2000s. Like seeing Josie and the Pussycats get a disc or a Blu-ray disc. That's really nice to me. Growing up, I came of age and started liking movies in the mid 90s. So a lot of the movies that I grew up with and have a lot of nostalgia for, or even think are just legitimately great movies, are finally kind of getting into that cycle of people wanting to kind of bring them back out. Not just it's like Fargo got announced for 4K, which is great. I love Fargo, but that's never had a problem getting
right.
But there's plenty of titles that are kind of evergreen from the 90s, like The Big Lebowski or Pulp Fiction. Like those are always going to kind of keep getting brought back in every format, multiple editions. But seeing some of these other titles that are finally coming out, like, with the Paramount, like even Kids in the Hall Brain Candy was one that I had been wanting for a really long time and came out. So I'm really excited to see that happening. Paramount's also been really good with UHD. The UHD they did of Juice is incredible. I'm really excited to see what they did with Rosemary's Baby. I think it's nice to see the studios taking notice of what's working with boutiques, but also, with their like AV specs. I think it's been really nice seeing like what Universal, Sony, Warner Brothers, Paramount, like what they're doing with UHD. It's nice to see them like properly embracing it. Whereas I think that's, there's kind of an ebb and flow there with UHD and it being done properly, or it being done, I guess for no reason, depending on how you look at certain things. So I really appreciate that we're getting to that point in this lifespan of this format where studios, boutiques, customers, like everybody in that ecosystem seems to finally know, like, this thing works. There's an obvious advantage to it. People are buying it. Like, let's kind of put everything we have into making it more viable.
Right.
There was definitely a period there where it was kind of a little touch and go. And I think now, I would say a lot of that is likely due to boutiques embracing it.
Oh, yeah.
And that driving up the market. But I could be wrong. I'm not an industry analyst. I just see what I see online. So,
well, my big thing throughout all of the ebb and flow of the studio doing it this year seems to be that they're embracing UHD in the right ways. It feels like, just on the technical side. But now it seems like some of them are letting some of the extras just fall by the wayside. And I really hope that we find that balance of doing it right and contextualizing it properly the way that we could, because boutiques seem to have every aspect of that nailed down for the most part. But man, some of these, The Exorcist getting huge release in the UK, but very little in the US. And, we could speculate whether that might just be, they're going to re-release it again in a year and bring everything back and try to make some extra money that way or something. But it seems like if we're losing full on discs that they're producing elsewhere, we got to be able to get these out here if we're going to do that.
I think the other part of that too is that the importing market is really healthy as well, especially with 4K. With 99% of 4K discs not being region locked, I think there is a tendency for studios and boutiques to kind of catch on to that and know that people are probably going to import it anyway. So I would highly doubt that we see an Exorcist re-release in the US anytime soon with all the bells and whistles from the UK release. I think they're kind of letting that be a thing in the UK, which sucks, but at the same time, we're not going to not buy it. So I think the people who want it are buying it. They're not going to wait around for a year or two. Like, if it comes out in a year or two, is anybody going to really care? Right. I feel like the kind of general customer base is going to go to Best Buy, go on Amazon, buy the one that's $20, $25. They're going to get that. They just want the movie. They're going to have it. It's fine. And then the rest of us who are like, why the hell didn't you release a better version in the US? We already bought the UK one anyway. Right. So what incentive do they have to re-release it? Like, I doubt there is one. But I think the marketplace is different depending on where you go. And it's in the US, there's boutiques, like Vinegar Syndrome or Severin or Criterion. There's these companies that do really well when they package things and have a high price tag. But I think the likelihood of something with a price tag similar to what Warner Brothers were charging in the UK on The Exorcist, if you tried to put that in Best Buy in the US, for instance, right, I don't think it's going to move. I think it would take up a lot of shelf space because it's big, and people would be confused. I think there's just a tendency for that stuff to kind of exist better online. And maybe that's unfortunate. I wish things were kind of universal, that everything was sort of treated the same way in every country and by all of the different arms of the studios. That's the kind of thing you also run into is MGM in the US versus MGM in the UK are run differently. Same with Warner Brothers. Right. With any of these studios, they have different arms. It's the people calling the shots in Hollywood aren't necessarily calling the shots in the UK or France or wherever you end up. So it's all different people. And, the kind of thing that you run into anywhere you work is people are very different. So the people that are in each territory that have things they care about might not be carried over from place to place. So I don't know that there's a fix there as much as it is, let's just keep buying stuff, which makes things better for us. I mean, we get what we want at the end of the day, and it shows that there's a market for it. And maybe at some point they will look into import data. They'll look into, what is Amazon UK selling in units for The Exorcist Lavish Edition, and how many of those are going to the United States? Does it make sense for us to, offer something similarly? But who knows? Maybe it doesn't financially, or maybe they're just like, screw you, we like the UK more. I don't know. It could really end up being any number of things. But I think, the way I look at it is I'm going to buy it. So at the end of the day, I'm getting the best version of the movie that I can have.
Well, you are just like many of us collectors, as you're alluding to right now, is that you're buying many of these things across the board, and neither one of us are industry experts necessarily. But how do you get a feel for the entire physical media industry as a whole at the moment? Because obviously, the tired argument of this has been in decline for the last, I don't know, we'll say 25 years at this point. But I mean, in certain criteria, it is more lavish and better than ever before. We're getting titles that were previously only stuck on VHS or DVD, really finally seeing some of these home video releases, or some that have never been released on home video ever. And the whole golden age argument doesn't really mean a whole lot at the end of the day. But how do you feel? Because I feel the pandemic came in and shook things up for a lot of these companies, and now that is trailing off. Just curious how you feel like we're doing health-wise at the moment.
I think we're doing great. I see so many different limited editions from different companies selling out fairly quickly. Some people will kind of decry that, saying it's a problem. And, I have empathy for people who miss out I'd miss out on stuff sometimes. Like, I'm not there quick enough, or I tell myself, it'll be there next week. And then hopefully I get it. If I don't, then, I'm on eBay with the rest of the people looking for something. It's not like, those of us in the industry have an easy out here. Like, we're
Right.
customers as much as anybody else is, if not, even maybe more so. So I fall prey to the same limited edition tactics that, the people who buy Vinegar Syndrome titles do. But to me, you can see that as either a sign of health in the format and in the medium. It's a health. It shows good health in physical media. It shows good health in people liking and accessing movies, including movies that they haven't seen or heard of before.
Right.
Or you can see it as a sign of good health in FOMO, in, kind of flipping economy. Depending on how you look at it, I guess it's positive or negative. I choose to look at it as health in physical media and health in movies. But, there is that other side of it. The flipper economy is definitely a big part of it.
I feel like that black market economy, I guess, is reducing in size, especially over this last year. It seemed like 2022 was a big time for people buying something and immediately listing it in Facebook groups, or something sells out and within 2 hours eBay is chock full of limited editions for that title. But it seems like lately they're not selling. So I'm trying to figure out if that means the actual people that love these films are finally the ones getting these, or if flippers were just, this isn't worth it anymore, let's just get out, or what. But it seems like finally people are holding on to titles, it seems like. So I just hope these films actually get recognition more so than some of the packaging that people have been so, I have to have, every single aspect of this.
Yeah, to me, the idea, or the ideal, I guess, if you will, is that the people who are buying things to sell it started realizing they liked it, and now they're actually buying them and collecting them. It's for us, we never want to hold on to only the same people forever. You don't grow that way. If you're a company, the goal is to always be bringing in new people. That's why labels that release movies don't release just one kind of movie. It's why, Vinegar Syndrome doesn't release only horror movies or only adult movies or something. Like, you have to be, welcoming other people kind of at all times. And if we're not doing that, then, somebody's doing something wrong. If we're not appealing to different people, you don't have to appeal to everybody, but you should appeal to more than one type of consumer. Right. And so at the end of the day, it's, if people are buying this stuff and they're buying it with the intention of just putting it on a shelf because they like to collect physical things, or they're buying it because they want to actually watch the movie and all of the extras, or they're buying it solely with the purpose of making a few bucks because they can think they can flip it. If any one of those people is coming back and realizing that they like the product and there's a reason that they're buying this that isn't just only to make money, then I think that's a great thing. And, hopefully some of the people that were solely buying to flip have realized, like, there's a lot of thought and care put into this thing. And, there was a lot of, effort and money and whatever put into the movie itself. And there's kind of this whole, mantra behind this thing existing.
Right.
The movie existed, the physical media existed, the new art, the new, booklet writing, the new extras, all of this is a labor of love for kind of everybody involved. So I hope that's pretty palpable when people, open up a package, regardless of who it's from, whether it's us or any other label. Hopefully people are realizing that, and that maybe they're saying, oh, this is something worth keeping. And of course, there's always going to be people who flip because they want to, or there's going to be people who flip because they need to. I mean, there's always, one of the things for us as collectors is that we always hope our collection appreciates in value. We are, at least I don't buy things just to collect certain labels. I don't fault anybody who does that, but I buy movies that I want. I've always collected the movie first and then everything else kind of after that. So for me, I always hope, that whether it's movies or vinyl or comic books or anything else that I collect, that that value of that stuff is going to increase over time. So I think it's only natural to kind of want that to be the case. And we know, like, oh, if I lost my job tomorrow, my collections are worth, so many tens of thousands of dollars or whatever. So I think that there is that, idea that we're collecting something out of, maybe a stewardship, out of kind of like an archivist mentality, or we're collecting things just because we don't want to rely solely on Netflix. We want to be able to watch the movies we want to watch whenever we want to watch them. But I think there's also like an insurance in collecting, and that we are collecting things that will be worth money later on. And if something tragic happens, all these Blu-rays that I spent all this time and money collecting, they can help me out. Like, they are there. I don't have to sell my car. I can sell my movies. Like, I think there's, and you see that in the forums, people are having some type of, life event that requires them to kind of go and make some quick money, and they can rely on this community. They can rely on, the kind of rabid eBay buyers and sellers market, or, whatever they want to do, where they can kind of exploit this thing that they've been kind of cultivating for so long.
This last year has seen a little bit of a tide change in what you just brought up. The public, like, Facebook groups and the Blu-ray forums and Twitter, which is always kind of a cesspool lately. I don't know if it's just me, but there's this overwhelming, like, increasing amount of negativity towards some of these labels and decisions. And like a month and a half ago, you and I were joking about this, where it seems like some of the comments, it seems like people feel forced almost, or like handcuffed to the idea of these companies are making me buy this thing. I don't even know, like, how to start the conversation here, but obviously these companies just hope that you like the product. But do you recognize anything that any of these companies are doing that shouldn't be happening, or something that should change so that people have some sort of different attitude? Or I don't know, how do you gauge that reaction? Because to me, it feels like this year has been very different.
I think with, fans of anything, whether you're a fan of a label or a musician or like a game developer or a comics publisher, like anything that you're a fan of, especially if you're a fan of it for a long time, you kind of feel like you're a part of that. You feel like you helped shape it, or you helped make it what it is, or, there's definitely going to be some type of, reciprocity that I think people expect, like, or they want things to stay familiar, and I think that's a pretty human thing to, if you're subscribing to Shudder, you're expecting it to be horror movies every month.
Right.
If you're buying records from like Death Wish Records or something, you're expecting it to be like hardcore records. Like, you kind of expect things to sort of stay in their street, so to speak. So I think there are people who expect things to sort of function a certain way. And some of that's just because it's a pattern and people don't like change, might be resistant to change. And then there's a comfortability in knowing, like, I'm going to go buy something from this company and, like, this brand represents X thing. Like, I know, like, I haven't heard of this movie. I have no idea who these people are. This director means nothing to me. But I know if I buy this movie from this company, I'm going to like it because I've liked everything else they've put out. And, that's a good thing. At the end of the day, like, back when I was even film programming, the thing I wanted was that people could put, like, their trust in me.
Right.
I could curate something, and regardless of if you didn't usually like sci-fi movies, you could go, well, I like the stuff this guy, kind of puts out there. I'll probably like it. And that's a lot of pressure, because you never want to be seen as something that's, like, infallible, especially when it comes to taste, because taste will always be subjective, regardless of if you think the person who's curating something or the company who's curating something is really good at what they do. It doesn't mean that you're always going to like what they do. And that's fine. I have no problem with people, going into a forum or a Facebook group or on social media and being like, really didn't like this movie that, this company put out, whether it's our company or any other company. Right. That's totally fine. Not everybody who buys, horror movies from Severin is going to like the Black Emmanuel box. Like, it's just, they're almost apples to oranges. Maybe
Right.
the same kind of like ethos is there, like the spirit or whatever. There might be some excess that people will gravitate towards, but at the end of the day, they're like very different movies. And that's like with us, I'm not expecting the people who like our horror titles to love sidekicks. Like there's going to be people who like both.
Right.
I love Chuck Norris movies and I love gory horror movies, but I don't expect everybody to be that way. To me, it's more when you get into the territory of people who are saying, like, this shouldn't even be here.
Right.
Kind of like, well, why? At the end of the day, like, we all want the same things, I think. I think the customers and people who run labels and people who even make movies, I think that they all want the same things, which is to have as much out there being accessible as possible and in like the best formats possible. And whether that's us or anybody else doing that work and making it available, I think it really goes that, across the board is just, let's all kind of like what we like and put out the things that we care about. And even if you might not like all of the same movies and things, like you're still putting that same care into it. Like anything I work on, I'm always going to put the same amount of care into it as anything else, regardless of the genre or when it was made or who made it or whatever. Like I'm always going to put like that same amount of effort into it. And I think that's what you see with, the boutique labels across the board is they're not all only doing like one thing, but what they're doing well across the board. Their intentions are all really good. So I don't really understand the kind of mentality of like, oh, I have to buy. That's why I was saying I don't buy everything from any label. Like, I don't buy every Criterion release. I don't buy every Arrow release. I buy the ones that, I either want to see and haven't seen, or, appeal to me for some reason, or, maybe certain filmmakers I'll collect every film of. Like I want to have, the career of a certain filmmaker, even if there's movies I don't like in there, like that's how I collect. But I don't know, the whole idea of like being loyal to a label to the extent that you have every single thing is totally fine if like that's how you collect. But if that's how you're choosing to collect, you can't be mad about, well, I don't like this movie. Why did I have to buy it? It's like, well, the reason you have to buy it is because you've chosen to collect every title that that company has put out. If I collected every title from every label that I buy from, my house would just be, every room would be movies. Like I don't even know how you do it from a space perspective. Like I just don't really.
It's getting more impossible. I will tell you that.
And it's getting to a point where, in a given month, with each label putting out a few releases a month, in a year, I mean, it's just hundreds and hundreds of movies a year.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do it myself.
I think it was last month on one of my Thursdays, we had more than 100 announcements to cover in 1 week.
That's crazy.
1 week. That is unfathomable compared to a couple of years ago. That's crazy.
And there's more labels keep starting. You start thinking you're like at the top of where it could go, and it's like every month or two, it's like, oh, there's somebody else doing something, or another, overseas label or something. It just seems like there's always something new kind of starting.
It's true. There really is. Things starting new is a good way, I think, to dive into what I view maybe as your most personal approach online lately. And that is when you type in Justin Laliberty just into a Google search bar, one of the suggestions is Justin Laliberty Letterboxd. Your Letterboxd is so special. Some of the lists that you have on there are remarkably specific, remarkably dense, and done in a way that feels curated, like what you've done through most of your life. And I'm, just from a tool standpoint, somehow I've noticed that there's a lot of people that follow my channel and a lot of these other channels that give information on these releases that don't use Letterboxd. First off, can you pitch Letterboxd, since you obviously love it? Why should people jump into it? Because it's kind of an incredible tool.
Well, I've been using it since like the beta. So I've been using it for well over 10 years now, something like that. So I've been using it for so long that like I don't really know how to not use it. Like I've been using Letterboxd for longer than I've been using Twitter or Instagram. Like to
Right.
me it's like what I go to. You know, Facebook is probably the only thing I had that I actually like used at all prior to Letterboxd. So I don't know. I'm not a big like social media person. I probably seem that way because I do go on Twitter quite a bit, but I don't like social media. I find it really, you know, kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I've never been good at kind of, you know, like how you do or any of these other, you know, kind of like the home video blogs and things like I could never do that because I don't have like the attention to like go in and like, you know, talk
Right.
to people and promote stuff. Like I'm not good at that. But I love Letterboxd because for me it just kind of exists as something very isolated. Like I really like that, you know, for anybody who doesn't use it, it's a basically a film tracking app. You can log the movies you watch, review them, make lists. I like it for making lists. It's kind of how my brain works. You know, I spent years as being an archivist and a programmer, so having a space where I can kind of have lists. You can have private lists if you don't want, you know, those to be public. And for me, it's always just been this kind of way for me to keep track of what I watch too, because I watch way too many movies. Like a lot of people, you know, watch a lot of movies, but I have like over 1,000 a year, which
Jeez.
is completely ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous, but I don't know any other way to be. I've been that way since I was a lot younger. So, you know, I'll watch like 3 or 4 movies a day, and it gets hard to keep track of that. Like people will say, you know, like, what have you watched this year that's good? And it's like, oh, well, I've watched 700 movies this year. Like, it's like the easiest way for me to even like go and look at, it's like, I need data. Like I need to be able to go through and like look at data. And the nice thing with Letterboxd, especially if you pay, like I have a patron account, you can get all this, you know, these stats and sort of data points that you can kind of look at and see where you're at in regards to, you know, what you're watching, when you're watching it. And I really like that. I love data in general. But the lists are really, you know, I think the thing that I spend the most time with on Letterboxd is it's a way for me to kind of put my research into a place that can be private or public. So I have, you know, 100 something public lists, but then I have dozens of private lists too of like things that I'm personally working on that probably don't make sense for other people to see because they're just weird.
Right.
Or they're just like so specific to like my train of thought that they wouldn't, you know, make sense for I don't know, mortals. I have very specific tastes. So I don't know. I really like the platform. I spend a lot of time on it, and I try and, you know, express how I feel about things in a way that makes people want to be a part of that, if that makes sense. You know, I've always wanted to approach like spectatorship and just like cinephilia in a way that's very communal and welcoming. I don't like the idea of like gatekeeper culture really bothers me. I've never liked that. I always want people to feel like they can dive into anything at any point in their life, that they shouldn't have to like, you know, have done research or, you know, spent decades kind of immersed in this thing. They can just go in and be like, oh, this obscure 70s horror movie that nobody I know has seen, like, I can't watch that yet. I haven't seen all these big ones. It's like, no, just like watch it. Like, you'll have a great time. Like, I've never kind of approached anything that way. I just want people to watch what they want to watch and have a good time. And hopefully I can point people in a direction that makes sense for them.
One of the things that if you're following Justin's Letterboxd closely, you'll see, it seems like film Twitter, especially compared to some of these other platforms we've been talking about, is very anti-modern cinema. And thankfully, you're one that I appreciate, that you are very pro just feed me every movie out there, basically. And do you know, if you could try to share that dogma with everybody, how would you go about that? Because it's something that it seems like there's just a mental switch that they flipped and said, if it's made after 99, no thank you.
I mean, I watch like every year when, you know, new movies are coming out, I probably average like 200 of the new releases from a year. So I pretty much, you know, watch like as much as I can for any of like the big titles. Like I watch all the Marvel movies and DC movies, like whatever's big that's coming out. Like everybody else in the world, I did Oppenheimer and Barbie. Like I'm not like stuck in a lane of I'm only watching movies from like the 60s through 90s or something. It's
right.
For me, it's film is constantly like evolving. The idea of not watching something like Across the Spider-Verse is like crazy to me, which I just watched last night and it's great. So it's like I'm not gonna kind of wall myself off from like the pleasures of things that are being made now, because why would I do that? Like I don't.
Right.
The idea of not embracing something is just like totally the opposite of how I'm wired. Like, and I want to be able to have that point of reference, I think, and that's personally and professionally. Like, I don't think I would be good at my job if I was only watching movies that were made decades ago. And, in that job specifically being like what I do with OCN, which is a lot of current movies, and to not really know what's on the festival circuit or what's, hitting streamers or is making money at the box office, like not knowing what those like market trends are, what is being critically praised or argued over, like
right.
being part of like that kind of conversation in real time to me is as important as anything like historical is. So I think both go kind of in tandem. Like to me, there's no separation. It's all like one big pool. I think a lot of people kind of see like the past and present as two very different things. I don't know. I don't know if there's a dogma as much as it is just I want to watch anything I can watch, and
right.
I don't really see any reason to not do that.
Well, and I don't understand the argument that people make that there's nothing good being made. Like there is tons of incredible, like how good is Past Lives? I mean, you've got that near the top of your list for this year. That movie was incredible.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing I've seen all year.
It was a damn near perfect movie. I love that thing. And people, will say, well, it was made past 99, so it can't be good. I can't grasp that.
Yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of movies, so it's like I can't even like comprehend not doing it. It's just, and even I definitely see a lot more people talking about how like good genre movies aren't made now, which I also don't really understand.
Right.
Well, I think that there's good movies being made across all genres currently, and from pretty much any country that you can think of. So I think it's a great time for new movies. I think this year has been pretty good. I don't think it's, I haven't seen like the best movies I've ever seen in my life this year. I think there's a few that stand out really well, Past Lives being one of them. But, in the 2020s have been kind of a weird time because we had the pandemic and, now we have the strikes. So it's a very interesting time to kind of watch film developing. And I think if you're not doing it in real time, like it's weird. If you go like 5 years from now and you go back and start watching movies from the 2020s, it's going to be really interesting to compare, what movies were like 2020 to like 2023, just because of the limitations of people, working with, producing films during the pandemic, especially. So I think that's going to be a pretty interesting contrast to like the films of the 2010s, and also just in, how many films came out in certain years that were delayed, things that were noticeably delayed. Like when you watch them, you can tell that things were shot in chunks. So I think that's, something to really kind of like soak in as it's happening, rather than distancing yourself from it and watching it in like 5 or 10 years and then going, oh, well, it's old now, I can watch it. Like, I don't really, like, why would you do that? Why not just kind of experience it as it's happening? I think it's a really interesting time.
Well, and even like creating the trends, like you just mentioned, with the pandemic and the strikes, I can't imagine how different it's going to be in 3 years, because the outcome of these strikes are going to shape a lot for the immediate future. It's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah, and it's also just, what does that mean for the rest of 2023, early 2024? Like, things are going to get pretty nebulous there with, release dates and what things qualify for what awards and what those distribution strategies are, how it affects box office grosses. Like, and then you have like weird shakeups like the Taylor Swift thing for October. So I think, it's a really interesting time to kind of like analyze what's happening, like marketplace wise, but also just to see what the films are themselves.
Well, and also what the films include. I mean, we've already had pandemic films start to come out. Sick came out this year and did pretty well just on streaming. You're going to have a lot of stuff that could potentially be different from these strikes, especially with like the special effects groups starting to unionize and really stand up for themselves. So it'll be an interesting time. One of the lists that you have on Letterboxd that I really want to highlight for everybody is your Blu-ray Most Wanted list. Now, I have been fascinated to see how many you've been able to cross off of this list in the last year and a half.
Well, actually, I have to cross off Surviving the Game. I haven't crossed off yet.
Yeah, and that was top 5. So you're seeming to get some of these that have been on your list for a long time. Obviously, you're not privy to everything coming out, but do you think that they being the studios are seeing some of the demand for this, and we might see quite a few of these coming out over the next couple of years?
It's really hard to say, like that list is very much personally catered to my tastes. Like when I made a list called Most Wanted, but it's my Most Wanted. Like I don't, what other people might want is not necessarily what I want. And so like for me, the bucket list for me will always be The Devils. And it's likely never going to happen. Like I don't want to even like, trick myself into thinking it's possible. Like it'll probably not happen in my lifetime. And then for me, like the other big grail for me is a proper HD physical copy of True Lies, which, who knows? Like Disney did really good UHD editions for Speed and Heat. So maybe they'll do it, but I think that's also a lot of that kind of rides on James Cameron. So it's hard to say what will happen. I feel like there's constantly rumors of it being like that in the Abyss are like going to happen any day now, but I'll believe it when I see it. Like it's not, maybe the studios are paying attention, maybe they aren't. It's really hard to say. There's a lot of studio titles that I would love to see get proper editions, like Dead Presidents or Bringing Out the Dead. Maybe Bringing Out the Dead will fall into what Paramount's been doing, or maybe it'll even get licensed by Criterion because they're kind of on a Scorsese kick. So it's hard to say. I feel like I'm constantly just kind of surprised at what gets crossed off. Like, Just Another Girl on the IRT is another one that Paramount did recently. And that's one that I never saw coming, especially from their Paramount Presents line.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty underlying title to kind of put in a line like that. So I was really surprised. And maybe that's, maybe Bringing Out the Dead falls in there. Maybe Warner Archive finally does something with Dead Bang. I don't know. There's a lot of the things I really want to see happen are probably not at the top of a lot of other people's lists, but you never know. It's kind of like the Wild West out there right now. Like I can't really predict what's going to happen.
Well, we've gone through a lot of that. Let's go through some OCN stuff. It's been an interesting year. The Vinegar Syndrome subscription has been one of the more varied years compared to recently, I feel like. And there's been some, we talked about the fan response. There's been some consternation for people with certain titles. I don't really get it. I feel like it's been a strong year. Just to throw out some random questions, what do you think is one of the more slept on Vinegar Syndrome titles that came out this year?
Ooh, this year. Recently, I really love Killer Condom, which I think is one that people are expecting to be something it might not be. I think it's easy to kind of write that movie off as just going off of its title. It's a movie titled Killer Condom. Like you have an idea of what you're going to get, and you do get that. Like there are killer condoms in it, but it's a much different movie, I think, in tone than people are expecting. Like it's less schlocky and more of kind of like a tongue-in-cheek police procedural. It's also very queer, which I think people are also probably not expecting going into it. I really love it, and I think the 4K looks amazing. So I hope people take a chance on it. I think it's one that is probably going to need a little bit more time to catch on. People probably are most familiar with it back when Troma had it and put it out, as a Troma movie. And I think that, there's camps of people who are very pro Troma and will go to bat for anything Troma has done. And then there's a lot of people who are just like not on Troma's wavelength. And I'm like kind of smack in the middle where it's like, I love Toxic Avenger. You know, I think the first class of Nukem High is really fun. And some of their acquired titles I like. But for the most part, like a lot of the kind of like more on brand, like Troma schlock is not really my bag. And Killer Condon is not that. And I feel like a lot of people are probably thinking that's more like where it lies. So that's, you know, for me, I think that's like for what we've released like in the past couple of months, to me, that's kind of like the diamond in the rough that I feel like people are sleeping on.
Nice. With Vinegar Syndrome, there has been some, again, I hate to point out the negativity, but some of the pushback on foreign language film, and obviously on what Vinegar Syndrome has had to do over the last decade. It's natural to increase your net of what you're putting out there, increase the the influence of I'm able to get some of these Spanish horror films that we're doing. I love it. I don't even know how to phrase the question, I guess, but obviously with some people responding like, I subscribe to Vinegar Syndrome. Why are there so many films not in English? That to me is baffling. I could not comprehend, being in a situation where I would turn down film just because it was in Spanish or it's a Hong Kong film or something like that. How do you feel about the foreign output that Vinegar Syndrome has been doing recently? Because I think it's one of the most exciting things about the company lately.
I mean, I love it. Like, I'm very heavily involved in the Hong Kong films, so I'm a big fan. Like, I can't imagine why we wouldn't do it. Like, it's not,
right.
It's never really been something where I've been like, should we do this? Like, it didn't really come to mind as to not do it. Like, I just kind of assumed that, maybe wrongly, that people who are into this stuff are willing to watch foreign movies. Like, when I was even growing up, like as a teenager, like I was watching Hong Kong movies with subtitles. Like, I didn't really think, like, why would you not want to watch, Hong Kong movies like with subtitle tracks or Giallo movies with subtitles? Like, I don't, it's never really kind of come into mind as to like not do something with subtitles. Like, I just, they're films that make sense for us. You look, they're action movies, they're horror movies, they're sci-fi movies. Like, they make perfect sense. Why not do them? Like, if people don't want to read subtitles, I think that's more of like a thing that's, kind of internalized within them. Like, I'm not going to do this, but I don't think that really speaks to kind of our output. I think that we're just looking for films that we care about that, might not have been properly released in the US before, that make sense with our brand and with what we're trying to champion. And at the end of the day, like, they might be in English, they might not be. Right.
Well, with the brand and championing certain films, I think it's probably a good time to ask, and hopefully you can shed any light on this. There's been a lot of speculation over the last couple months with the moving of the adult titles to a different site. Is there any way that you can share behind-the-scenes information of why that was something that was pitched and necessary?
Not really. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it makes sense to kind of have them split off. I think, it makes it so that these adult films can kind of live and breathe a little bit more on their own. It allows us to focus more on them. I think, the people who gravitate towards those films are really kind of honed in on the ones that are like missing on disc or want to see more of a certain thing or certain performers or certain directors. They want more of that, and they want it to kind of be the focus. And now with the Melusine website, it is, it is the focus. It couldn't stay the focus for Vinegar Syndrome. We're doing so much as Vinegar Syndrome. So now that website allows us to kind of bring in, other companies. Now we have Distribpix is on there, and you've got the Quality X arm. And I think it's just a place where these things can kind of function on like almost their own island, so to speak. So to us, it's all positive. It's a way to say, hey, here's this thing. It's very valid. It has a home. Go buy the films here. And I think with that comes its own branding and its own kind of identity. And that way, it's not just all one umbrella. it makes sense. Like OCN is kind of its own thing too. It's accessed through the Vinegar Syndrome site, but it makes sense to have, Melusine be its own separate brand and identity. And I think the people who, the customers that really want those films and care about the history of it and, the accessibility of those films and kind of everything that comes with them, like the way they were marketed and the way they were promoted both then and, through video over the years. I think that trajectory is all going to kind of be evidenced in the way that we're handling them with, the artwork and other elements of the packaging and the way that, the extras are being done. It just allows more time and attention to kind of be paid to those films and for more of them to come out, which at the end of the day, like,
that's a win.
If we're getting more of this thing that people like and care about, I can't see any negative to it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. On that note, one of the things that we talked about earlier was just this industry as a whole, how many boutiques are out there. At the risk of this sounding in a potential way offensive, which is not meant to be at all, is there discussion inside OCN to be cognizant of, not taking over the industry? Because when you have 24 partner labels now, it can oh geez
yeah
it can feel overwhelming to a lot of people that on the first of every month go, oh god, there's we'll say 16 partner labels and 4 Vinegar Syndrome titles. That's a lot for one day. And obviously, I just said, nobody's forced to buy them all, so it shouldn't feel like that necessarily. But I could understand being a smaller label going, well, how do you survive in a world where Vinegar Syndrome's ruling the country?
I mean, you just do your best, I guess. I don't think that we're the end all be all here. I work for Vinegar Syndrome and I work with OCN, but I buy from like every company under the sun. Like in a given month, I'm buying stuff from every other label out there. Like it's not we're not expecting people to come to Vinegar Syndrome on the first of the month, buy Vinegar Syndrome partner label titles and like not buy anything from that would be crazy. That's not good for the health of our industry for people to only buy from us and nobody else. Like that's not what we're hoping happens. We're just hoping that, between Vinegar Syndrome, OCN, and Melusine, we're covering a lot of ground. And that way it's, if you come on the Vinegar Syndrome site on the first of the month, between the Vinegar Syndrome and Melusine site anyway, you should find something that you want to watch. I don't think or expect anybody to come on and buy every Vinegar Syndrome partner label and Melusine title. Like that's crazy. I'm very grateful for anybody who does that. Like that is amazing. And that's like the best, thing that you could really do is support us as much as you can. But that's a very high ask. Like we would not, it's, if you come on in a month and buy anything, like that's incredible. Like that's what we want. I don't want people to come onto the site and go, nothing for me this month, because then I'm like, how? Like that's if I see that, in a post, I'm just like, how is that possible? Like we have countless, genres, decades, like different countries. There's really like in a given month, especially with like building kind of the OCN schedule and seeing what's coming up. Like I'm always trying to have like variety in there. And for anybody to come in and be like, no, there's nothing here that interests me. It's just like, how is that possible? Like, even if it's like, I don't have money, fine excuse. Totally understand. Like, okay, you don't have money this month. Good. Like, that's
right.
We've all been there. But to come in and say like, I'm not interested in any of these movies, that like kind of boggles my mind, because it's like, I don't know. I feel like we're doing a good job of offering something for almost any taste. And so with OCN, it's never been, kind of the thought process to like conquer the market or conquer the world or take money from other, labels or anything. It's really just like, this is stuff we care about. These are companies we like working with.
Right.
They're providing, a service to like film culture at large. Like, let's work with them because like our ideologies are similar. We like what they're doing. We like the films that they're working on, and let's push this all out through the same pipeline. And that way there, it's for consumers who are coming to the Vinegar Syndrome site, especially people who are international, they can now order from all of these other companies, get things shipped in like one box, wherever they live, good shipping charges. Like, I think it's a nice way of spreading awareness of the things these companies are doing. And a lot of them, they're doing a lot of this work on their own. And to be able to kind of step in and say, we'll handle fulfillment for you, we'll handle your wholesale, we'll take these things off of your plate, and we'll work together to kind of get these films out in the marketplace and get them, some of these films are screening theatrically, some of them are also on VOD, just kind of getting people talking about them is really the whole goal. We want to sell discs, but we also want the films themselves to be like a part of the conversation.
Well, let's make some films be a part of the conversation then. I would like to go around some of your mindset for programming and what you've done in the past and just dive into some personal recommendations, because we didn't go into that too much last time that you were on. So I'm curious, just some Justin favorites. So who do you think is like the most impactful director for you personally for all time?
I told you, I watched too many movies. I think I've logged something like 12,000 movies on Letterboxd. So
wow.
I just I don't know. I always think I have an answer for something like this. Or when people are like, "What's your favorite movie?" and I'm like, I can't even. It's really like eras of my life were different. Like when I was a kid, or kind of at least becoming like more cognizant of, film or whatever film could be. I was really drawn to spectacle, which I think a lot of kids are. So like James Cameron, Terminator 2 like blew my mind when I was a kid. Yeah. And, Steven Spielberg, like Jurassic Park, of course. Like I came of age in the 90s. Like I was 7 when Jurassic Park came out. So that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I still gravitate towards that stuff. I really like Spielberg and I really like James Cameron. I didn't like age out of any of that. Like I still, I think a lot of people like our age are very nostalgic for those movies. And I came of age when Tarantino was a thing. So, as much as I don't want to be like a film bro, like Pulp Fiction was a movie that really blew my mind when I was that age. I saw Pulp Fiction when I was 10, which is probably like way too young, but it also, I think my parents were very supportive of the fact that I loved movies and very clearly wanted to do something with them when I grew up. So yeah, I mean, Pulp Fiction was like a huge thing when I was a kid. But I think as far as voices that really kind of shaped my cinephilia later on would be like John Waters was huge. Just kind of like that outsider art mentality. Like that, when I first saw Pink Flamingos, like that was a movie where I kind of saw that like anyone could make a movie and they could do it like by any means necessary. So I think like John Waters is huge. Brian De Palma is huge for me. You've got a Carrie poster, so you're clearly a De Palma fan. And then like kind of just like the heavy hitter foreign, filmmakers were huge to me, like Godard, Kurosawa. I think like that type of thing is you just start, at least for me, like my approach to kind of film culture when I was a teenager and in high school, and then even going into college, was just to kind of go through like every list I could, like the AFI lists, Sight and Sound lists, like just going through and just watching like anything I could, at least get my hands on. When I was a teenager, it was a little harder. Just like DVD was like starting to be a thing, but some of that stuff was not easy to track down. It's not like it is now. Bresson was huge for me, but it like took me forever to find a copy of Pickpocket. And when I did, it was like, this is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. So I think now, my tastes are just so all over the place that, as far as the people I gravitate towards the most now, like as far as people I like rewatch stuff from the most, it's probably John Carpenter's probably like the top. Anis Varda is really high up there, but it's, I don't, as far as filmmakers that have had a huge impact on me, it's all over the place depending on like what age I was at. And I think now I just kind of, I rewatch stuff from like the same people, John Carpenter, Anis Varda, Michael Bay. I'm a huge Michael Bay fan, which I think people don't expect. But yeah, I'm a huge Michael Bay fan. And just, I don't know, I just like watching movies.
How good was Ambulance?
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. I love
this
Ambulance.
It's the best movie of last year.
I'm so glad you said
that.
Before we go into more taste, you said something that maybe is a good question to bring up here. With watching so many movies, how do you do with memory? Like, are you able to actually have the impact of the film and remember it throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that speaks to the quality of the film, or the lack thereof. Some of the worst movies I've seen in a year are more memorable for me than some of the for me it's hard to remember the average ones. Ones that I might put on on Netflix or something at 10 o'clock at night and think it was fine. For me, that's going to be a harder movie to remember. But the really bad ones I remember, and the really great ones I remember. So. Memory is not, I'm a very obsessive person, I guess. So memory is not too bad. It's more, my memory more so lags when I'm like, what the hell did I watch last week? That's, because it's so much. But if somebody asks me about a specific movie, I can usually remember, what it was or who was in it or things of that nature.
Where do you land on the best year for cinema?
Oh boy.
Obviously we got the common answers of 84, 85, whatever, 99. There's 10 years that people universally seem to agree on. 99
is a huge one for me. I mean, that's, The Matrix was such a thing. And still is for me. I'm kind of obsessed with The Matrix. That's an enormous movie for me. Talk about I can't believe I forgot, during that filmmakers that impacted me, Kubrick is huge, and Eyes Wide Shut, probably the most of any of his films for me, that in 2001. But yeah, 99 is really huge. And I think if I was going to go, as far as a year that is in my lifetime, I would say 99 or 95, because 95 had, Strange Days is a movie that I love, and so is Showgirls, and those are both 95. But I think if I was going to go back from before I was born, I would say 72. And that is, that's The Godfather, Pink Flamingos, which, was a really formative one for me. Solaris is another one that I'm just kind of Solaris and Aguirre were that year, and both of those are movies that I can't even comprehend how you could make them. Especially Aguirre, everything Herzog made in that time period is just kind of he's as much a force of nature as anything that he's kind of contending with in making those films. So yeah, and Solaris too is just, you kind of look at Tarkovsky's films like that, and Stalker are films that you look at now and you just can't believe that somebody made those decades ago. 72 is also Deliverance, which is a movie that scared the absolute shit out of me when I saw it as a kid. I was maybe 12 when I saw Deliverance, and I grew up in New Hampshire, and we'd go hiking and do boating and all kinds. I was I'm not going anywhere. It's I'm not going outside this summer. After seeing Deliverance, it totally shook me. And speaking of kind of on a similar path to Deliverance, is 72 is also Last House on the Left, which is another huge movie for me growing up. Seeing that as a teenager, it really shook me to my core. So yeah, I think 72 is a huge year for me. I think if it wasn't 99, that's what I would go with.
Interesting. And it's so crazy that Pink Flamingos was 51 years ago now. That is wild to even think about. Anyways, what is the best rep screening that you feel that you've ever been to?
It's one that I've done. I feel like it's bad to answer with a screening I put on myself, but I got to screen the most uncut print of The Devils, and that was it's kind of holy grail movie for me. So I was able to get the print and play it when I was programming at Alamo. So, I feel like it's a cheat to say it's one that I did, but seeing that print was, something I never thought I'd be able to do, and to be able to show it was really incredible.
What about one that you haven't done then?
Well, I saw, I think it was Black Hat with Michael Mann at BAM, and that was amazing.
I still have yet to see Black Cat, so I'm very excited about that Arrow release.
It's great. I know it was pretty like slept on when it came out, and yep. I'm a huge fan of it.
I'm very guilty of doing some of that sleeping. Let's go through some like rapid fire questions then, if you're okay with that. OCN partner labels. Which one fits your taste the most?
That's hard. I mean, the problem is my taste is so all over the place that
right.
I don't know that one suits my taste, more than any of the others. I'd say the one that I've been getting there's really two that I've been getting the most kind of like discovery mileage out of lately, and that's Canadian International and Connie. Like those are the two that like I've heard of the least amount of films and am really like blown away by, what they're offering up. Canadian International had one movie that's like my favorite movie I've like seen for the first time in years, and that's Kanesatake. I'm probably pronouncing that absolutely horribly, but I think it's Kanesatake. It's 270 Years of Resistance.
Yep.
It's like a very powerful kind of activism documentary. Really reminded me of Punishment Park, which is one of my all-time favorite films. So that I don't want to pick like one title to kind of rule them all out of the partner label releases, but that movie like really hit me in a place that I hadn't been like hit in a long time. So, and then I really have a hard time with like which one suits my taste the most, but I think those two are the ones that kind of I think speak to me in a way that I'm really like looking for right now, just kind of at the place I am in life at the moment. And then Deaf Crocodile, I'm really enjoying kind of seeing what they dig up, because it's also usually stuff that I haven't heard of. And then as far as my similar wavelength, just in terms of I guess what I've gravitated to for a long time, it's probably AGFA, just that sort of mantra of like preserving kind of, I guess, forgotten cinema or exploitation cinema. The Doors Wishman sets were like a massive undertaking and labor of love for everybody. So, and
now they just did this new set, the John Mortsugu, that I really hope people see.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite releases from like any company this year. Regardless of it coming through us or not, I think it's like a gift.
Nice. 2023 as a whole, what brand new film do you feel like is being slept on the most?
I mean, Past Lives, I think is still the best thing I've seen. I don't know if it's being slept on because it, got a ton of critical attention. So it, has been at least championed. I also, slept on, not sure, Master Gardener, I feel like didn't get enough attention. I really like what Paul Schrader's been doing recently, especially First Reformed, which I feel like First Reformed was a lot more kind of publicly championed than Master Gardener has been, but Master Gardener, I think, is like almost as assured a film as First Reformed was. And then the one that caught me by surprise was How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which I thought I was going to like, but I didn't expect it to be like as riveting of a thriller as it is. It's just like a really solid eco thriller. Reminded me kind of how I felt the first time I saw The China Syndrome. So highly recommend that. I feel like that's getting a lot less attention than it should be.
What boutique label that is not related to OCN do you get most excited to see announcements from?
Ooh, lately, I would say Indicator and Severin, just because of their attention to box sets and usually focused on filmmakers or like film series that I think kind of fly under the radar.
Right.
So those are probably what I'm most eager for right now. But like I said, I buy stuff from every label, so it's really, there's no label I'm not excited to see announcements from. But yeah, those are the two that I think right now, it's pretty much whenever they announce something, I'm probably buying whatever it is.
Re-releases are hitting some of these other companies really hard, and a lot of people that buy frequently feel miffed by re-releases, especially things that are getting, oh, this got a Blu-ray 2 years ago, now got a 4K upgrade. Are you one to upgrade frequently, or do you just let those pass by?
Oh, I upgrade. Yeah, if anything's, I mean, Blu-ray to 4K, 100%. Blu-ray to Blu-ray, not really doing that much these days because I'm hoping that a 4K will come out. But if, I bought a Blu-ray of something 2 or 3 years ago and now the 4K is coming out, I'll buy the 4K. Unless I'm really skeptical about, the source used or who's doing it, I will more than likely just pre-order the 4K. Especially if it's limited, I'm pre-ordering it. And if it's not good, I guess, oh well, it's just what it is. But yeah, typically if it's a Blu-ray to Blu-ray upgrade, I'm probably not going to buy it right away. I'll at least wait and see, how much of an upgrade that really is. I'd much rather see 4K upgrades at this point. With studio titles, like new releases, if it's coming out and it's only Blu-ray, I'm not buying it because I'm just assuming that a 4K is coming at this point. I'm not falling for it. So I did fall for it this year with Infinity Pool, and I felt really stupid about it, but I did buy the 4K anyway. So
Universal's been really bad about that this year too. They've done the 4K again in the UK. They've done UK 4Ks and then 8 months later done 4K here.
Yeah, I'm not. If there's no 4K on day of release, I'm waiting.
Let's go down that same path then. What is recently, again, not OCN related, most mind-blowing 4K restoration that you've seen recently?
Oh, that's hard. 4K, like from the US, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter. Just what film that you saw a 4K restoration, or especially, a great UHD that you go, good Lord, this looks incredible.
I was really, maybe I shouldn't have been as impressed as I was, but I was really impressed by the Hackers 4K. I love Hackers. That's another one of those 95 movies.
Yeah.
And maybe I should have given them the benefit of the doubt, but I was like, how good can you make Hackers look? Just because it's not a particularly visually attractive movie. And I was pretty shocked at how good that looked. That was Shout Factory. And then I also was pretty blown away by the 4K for Ronin from Kino. Because I thought the Arrow disc was really good when they did the Blu-ray. And the 4K was, I think, even better. So
Kino has gotten shockingly good with some of their 4Ks. This last year for them has been amazing with what they're choosing on 4K too. I don't know how they're getting some of those major titles. I hope it keeps coming though.
Yeah, they're pretty unstoppable. With the frequency they're putting them out, I feel like it's every day I'm seeing a Kino 4K announcement. And they recently did To Live and Die in LA, which was one I thought was never going to actually come out, and then it did, and it's great.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Not to champion the negative, but is there a 4K restoration that you would say was so disappointing that you hope somebody would take another stab at it?
The only one that I still am upset by is Terminator 2.
Of course.
Which I think is kind of a punching bag at this point. But, it's still is arguably better than the Blu-ray. Maybe. I don't... it's almost like there's not really even a point. But yeah, that's one that I would absolutely love to see a new, really good disc for. But I think it ends up in the same bag as, True Lies with the Abyss, and that you'd have to wait for James Cameron to do something with it. And it's not going to happen. He lives in Pandora now.
I'm still holding out hope. The digital bits, which supposedly has a source next to Cameron, is saying that by the end of the year, we'll hear about both True Lies and the Abyss.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Same, but
I
still.
feel like you've been hearing that for 5 years.
Right. Other than that, you've got your list for things that were on DVD that you want to see the Blu-ray upgrade. What has never been on disc that is your most wanted title to see some lavish crazy release other than The Devils that has been on DVD, of course. What's something that would just go, okay, everybody has to buy this tomorrow?
Ooh, I'd say Nothing Lasts Forever is up there. The Tom Schiller film. So that's I don't think that's ever been on disc from what I can remember. So there might be like maybe some bootlegs out there, but I don't think there's ever been an official disc release of that. So that's, to me, that's like high bucket list territory for me.
Interesting. I don't even know that one. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, you should. It's like a genre hybrid. Like I don't know how you'd explain it to anybody. It's like a comedy that's got sci-fi fantasy elements, takes place in and around New York City. But yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's one of those movies that like I don't think you can really properly explain to anybody who hasn't seen it. It's directed by Tom Schiller, who's most known for SNL. So it has like a sort of a reverential quality to it, but it's very strange. And it was produced by Lorne Michaels, so it has like this kind of SNL alum thing going for it. Like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray are in it, but it's not really the type of wacky comedy you'd expect from them. It's a lot more like ethereal and strange, but it's a very singular movie that I think is not really talked about often, probably because it's relatively inaccessible. But I feel like people who have seen it love it, so I would like to see that get done.
Very interesting. And that kind of reminds me actually of one of my favorite of your Letterboxd list, because I like a lot of the same stuff that you've put out there, and one of them is called Kitchen Sink Horror, and you put films in here that it's almost impossible to name a genre for, because there's kind of something of everything in there. Mm-hmm. I really hope people look at that list. It's a favorite of mine.
Yeah, I like horror movies where they don't stick to like it's a slasher movie or a vampire movie, or they're just like whatever's scary and gross. I'm just gonna, one of the movies we did that, I'm like drawing a blank now. There's a movie we did that was like perfect for that list. Now I can't remember.
Raw Force, maybe?
No, it was something we did that I can't remember the title now, but it was it was The Laughing Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just like an absolutely insane movie. And that's one where it's like there's no, like, I don't know what subgenre of horror you would put that movie into, because it's like every subgenre.
Yeah, that's my favorite type of movie, because there's always something to keep you interested. It just, no matter what you're expecting, they're going to subvert it in every single way possible. Love that. Vinegar Syndrome OCN, anything coming up that you want to get people excited for or shout out before we bring this to a close?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me right now is end of the year. We announced a while ago that with OCN, IFC is launching in December. Yeah. So that's been a long time coming. I've been working on that for about 2 years now.
Oh, jeez.
So it's been a long, long time coming, and that's, very exciting. Their catalog is great. There's going to be, a focus on Blu-ray upgrades of titles that they hadn't put on Blu-ray before. So a lot of kind of DVD era titles are going to be coming out on Blu-ray, at least in the US for the first time. Some of them will have been out overseas before, but a lot of them will have just never been on Blu-ray. So to me, that's extremely exciting. And then we have a couple more labels launching early 2024. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. Our Black Friday lineup this year is incredible. I think people are going to be really excited by it. Obviously can't say anything yet, but you'll have the Flash pre-order coming up soon. So some titles will be revealed, and then the rest will be revealed on Black Friday. But I think it's a very, very strong lineup. So.
Well, we've had some reveals. We know that some of the Prophecy films are coming. We know that there's the 10 film box set that's still coming by the end of the year, right?
Yep, should be.
And there's been so many questions about that. I'm eager to see, because I believe you guys had said on social media that they're all new films to Vinegar Syndrome, right?
Yes, but
That-
can't say anything beyond that. It is, again, like I keep saying that things are a labor of love, and like that is absolutely a labor of love. It's like we're all working on it. Like it's a very big like communal effort. Really excited for people to kind of see what it is and to get it out there and have all of the work on it pay off. I think people are going to be really excited. So
it's unprecedented. There's not been anything anywhere like that for Vinegar Syndrome, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. People are going to be happy about it.
Well, anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with everybody before we call this?
Not that I can think of. I don't know. Everybody should watch Showgirls. No, we sent out the corrected discs are out, and I'm just so happy that we got to do Showgirls and that it looks and sounds as good as it does. So, yeah, I know some people, that might be one that some people aren't happy that we did, but I am overwhelmingly happy that we did that. So,
me too. I think it's a much better film than people think.
Yeah, I think it's like a masterpiece. So, Verhoeven's another one of those filmmakers that, really impacted me strongly. And Showgirls is another movie I saw when I was way too young. Like 11 or 12 when I saw Showgirls. So, yeah.
That's bound to be formative at that point.
It really stuck with me, and here we are. So, yeah.
Well, full circle, thanks for coming back after a year. Hopefully this has been enjoyable like the first one, and maybe in another year we'll have another one.
Yeah, always happy to come by.
Thanks, Justin. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Disconnected Podcast. There's one big thing that you could do to help the show, and that is to leave a rating and review on the podcast service of your choice. Thank you.